Good afternoon and welcome everyone to an episode of the Dairy Signal. Regardless if this is your first time or you're a pro, we are excited to have you tune in with us. If you are for the first time or seasoned veteran with this, you'll notice the newer format. Hopefully this is a little more user-friendly to you, and the fact that you can watch and simultaneously ask questions at the same time. You no longer have to jump between tabs or screens. We're making it a little bit more convenient for you. So that box towards the right, just the same application that you used to of asking your questions and hitting send, same thing comes through and we'll ask them that way. But this is your direct way to connect with today's speaker and as well as future ones. So if you're listening with us live, ask your questions. Chances are someone else, maybe on the other side of the country or the state, is asking or thinking something very similar. So don't hesitate as you interact and engage in today's discussion. A couple of things that we also wanted to point out in this new layout. We are still cataloging and showcasing all of our episodes through. It's just sorted a little bit different right now. If you were looking for last week's or even some more closer up episodes, just resort your filter to descending instead of ascending order, and that will give you more of the more current episodes that are there. So again, they're still there. You just have to filter them in a different way just momentarily here. Now that we got some of the nuts and bolts out of the way, some fun facts as we are going into this Tuesday here. A little trivia Tuesday for you, and I think it'll tie in real well with today's discussion. And back in history, 1919, leaders of the big four nations, so that would include Italy, France, US, and the UK, they came together to meet really for the first time in Paris. This was, again, the meeting of the Paris, the forefront, or the peace negotiations that went in with World War I. But it really ties in, and how this is tying in today's discussion is pulling together that effective team. Who are those players? How do you come together? How do you communicate? And all that goes in between it. That's the reason why we're really highlighting that. There's a lot of going on in today's history and a lot of other fun facts, but that one really stood out for me personally. And without further ado, I think that is one of the best transitions that we could possibly ask for. Is I'm going to hand the floor over to our today's speaker, Liz Griffith. She's the Market Development and Human Resource Consultant with Encore Consultants. We've had her before not only with the DairySignal, but also work with PDPW. She's a great friend and advocate within agriculture, and we're just really excited for all the content she's got to share with us today. So without further ado, Liz, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Okay, sounds good. There's going to be a lot of information today, some things in depth, some not. So feel free to ask questions either during, through, or at the end. I will also tell you that at the end, if you want to write down or take a picture, on the last side, I have a way for you to get some additional documents and a free offer for you guys. So just want you to be aware of that. So again, we're talking about maintaining an effective employee team. So maintaining an effective team is very similar to anything else we may do. A plane cannot fly without a pilot. A plane can also not fly adequately with only a pilot, meaning a pilot needs a well-maintained machine that works effectively. This is similar to your farm teams. Team effectiveness can be defined as a team's capacity to accomplish goals or objectives administered themselves or by authority. So in order to be effective, a team often needs its employees to be engaged, productive, and driven. If these objectives are met, you're also going to realize employee retention, which, let's be honest, we're all going for that. So let's talk about what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about, hiring right and selection, onboarding, the right people on the bus, training, communication, and all that goes into that as far as feedback and listening and meetings, giving and receiving feedback. We're going to talk about stay and exit interviews and also some incentives. But what's your main takeaway? Well, what I want you to remember at the end of this presentation is that maintaining teams is not a once and done. It's an ongoing process. None of us are going to do everything right all the time, and that's okay. But over time, you can improve. And over time, you'll improve your team dynamics. So step by step, you can build your way to a more effective team. So we're going to start way at the beginning, selection and hiring. I'm just going to touch a little bit on where to hire, because again, I know we're all frustrated with where do we even find employees anymore. I'll just go through a bunch of areas, not really get in depth, but essentially what I'm saying is be as broad as you can. So that could mean using social media, reaching out to neighbors, friends in groups, church, wherever you can. You want to talk about your business. You want to meet people because that next kid could be your best employee. There's great programs out there, such as Indeed.com and Agri Consulting and Marketing that can also help you find people. I know we used to always say put an ad in the paper, but that seems a lot harder now. So again, use the tools that are working in today's world. But references, info from your friends and family, that's kind of the best. There's also a variety of programs out there where you can get interns, you can get TNs, you can get EB3s. Takes a little bit more work, but those are something to look into and consider, especially if you want, a good long-term employee. So what else? You find some people to select and to start looking at. The first thing you want to do is really put some time into this. And I say this with a great deal of personal experience, because most of us will just hire the next body that walks into the parlor. We're all guilty. It's a person. Yep, we'll throw you in and we'll find you a job. And sometimes we do get lucky and they turn out to be an exceptional employee. But more often than not, we find ourselves in a position where the employee is barely satisfactory or certainly not up to our standards. We tend to still keep those people though, because no one's knocking on the door, right? And a body is a body. But unfortunately, what does happen, especially when you're looking at your team dynamics, is the employee and the employer get disgruntled. In addition, the other employees get disgruntled. Pretty soon you have an unhappy and an unengaged team. More people leave, more people do mediocre work, and no one is truly on board. So really take the time to decide before you hire what you are searching for. So obviously maybe you have a particular role to fill, that's important. But what kind of person are you looking for? Make sure you just have that in the back of your mind. Then once you get some selections, I really urge you to interview. You need to take that time to have that one-on-one conversation with the person to determine if this could be a good fit. Ask open-ended questions. A lot of times we just ask yes or no questions, and then guess what? That's all you're going to get is yes or no. And that's not really telling you a lot about that person. And during that job interview, I always urge the owners or managers to be really clear about what the job is and what the expectations are. So that way the potential new hire can ask questions as well that are relevant to the position or to the learnings. I also urge, did you have a question?
Kind of tying in with that, in the world that we're in with 2020, 21 being fantastically creative, when it comes to the hiring, the interviewing, your basic tools or your dynamics have altered a little bit as far as the face-to-face contact and being able to even do a walkthrough with them and making sure this is the right fit for them. Are there alternatives? Have you made any suggestions or worked with fellow dairymen on how we can kind of work around this? Because this isn't a normal atmosphere, essentially, that we're in right now.
Right. No, I agree. It's very different. We've had a few customers who we've urged them to do phone interviews first just to really reduce, the selection. But then it's really important to do some type of one-on-one. And that could be Zoom, like we're using today, or it could be in person and just, hopefully keeping that social distancing. And if your farm requires it, wearing a mask. But as much as the world has changed, you need to really get a feel for that person. And as hard as it may be now, that's probably more important than not to do it. So anyway, we're going to talk about that. Another thing that I also urge is that in the interview, you tell them that there's going to be a probationary period, because that lets them know right away that just because I get this job doesn't mean that I'm good to go. Plus, it protects you as well. You want to really, dig deep in your training and see if this person's going to be a right fit. And of course, check references when you can. Make your selections carefully. And I know someone's probably going over there saying, hey, what about the language barrier? We're going to talk about that a lot today. I understand that, but again, there's enough tools that we can utilize to help with translation, or, hire someone for that day to help you with interviews, or in best case scenario, you have a trusted employee or vendor who's bilingual. You don't want to just use that as the excuse to not ask any questions. So another thing that we know happens on farms, personal experience myself, is that we get replacements or references from our employees. And that's a really good tactic, but you still need to learn for yourself if that person can be a good fit. And one thing that I like to just kind of warn people of is sometimes in that situation, they're almost like, I hate to use the word gang, but in a way, creating a gang or a cult of their favorite people. And in some instances, it works out great. And in others, it can have a negative effect on all your other employees, but also they seem to take almost control of the farm. And then you as leaders and managers lose that control. So always make sure you have some say in who you hire. So once you hire someone, the rest is 100% on you. You need to spend time, you need to make a commitment to provide an outstanding first day, a solid onboarding experience, and great training. 69% of employees are more likely to stay with any company for at least 3 years or more if they experience great onboarding. A successful onboarding process can increase retention and effectively get your new employee on board and understanding their roles and responsibilities sooner. So it's pretty important. I'm going to kind of tell you a story about one farm I worked with. We'll just call him Bob. He complained about this new employee heavily to me, pretty much saying the gentleman was an idiot. He could not catch on. He was slow as molasses. He wanted to know what was going on. So I took the time to talk to Bob as well as other team members. And what I learned is that Bob really had no idea about his roles, the expectations. The other team members agreed. There was really no training. When they hired someone new, they just threw them in the parlor and told them to essentially mimic the duties of the person in front of you, whether those duties were right or wrong. So again, that's not the type of onboarding and training you want to see. And we can certainly complain all we want, but when I say it's on you, it's on you. So we really don't have the right to complain unless we've put enough into this. And I get it, we're busy. Time gets the best of us. And we also feel that since we know how to do it, so should everyone else. But that's not the case.
Liz, on the comment of the hire, there's a question that came in and it said, you said to wait to hire that right person, wait for that right individual. But what if you can't wait? What if there's an opening and it's vital to the operation and you don't have a good candidate? What do you do then to make the best of it? What are some recommendations?
Yep, and believe me, it's happened to all of us, right? In that case, if that is your only source and you certainly can't wait, then put as much as you can into that employee with really good training and maybe a mentor, someone who's constantly working with them and helping them. But at some point, you really have to look at the value of your business and the value of your team. And if that person is going to bring down everybody, what's that cost to you? Is it the cost of one employee or the cost of three? Because somebody else may leave. But believe me, I do understand. I've been there myself. We've all had to hire in a rush or due to need because nobody else showed up for the job. So
I think that also goes into your comment of the communication, but then being transparent through the entire team and just kind of letting everybody know what's up, because maybe it's a job that could be picked up by several momentarily until that right person comes along.
Yep. And really, if you're including your team members on a lot of these discussions, and something like this I think is relevant to share with your team members, they may have other solutions as well. Because the last thing they want is someone who's going to bring them down. So, excellent question. So I like to talk about creating a moment on that first day. And I say that this first day really needs to be a scheduled first day. Okay, so you work that out beforehand. You pick the day that's going to work best for you. And prior to that new hire showing up, you want to make sure you tell them what to bring, right? Do they need to bring their documentation? Do they need to bring boots? Do they need to bring lunch? They need to know what they're walking into. So part of that creating a moment is also greeting them personally. Nothing says you're wanted more than a true greeting from the owners and managers. And do this right away when they arrive. And I know, guilty of this too, right? The new hire walks in and we're like, I'm just finishing milking the sick cows, just give me 15, 20 minutes. And there your new hire stands by the door twiddling their thumbs. That's not the moment we're going for, okay? This is about them. Because really, when we say create a moment and making this the best day, what you want is, as the employer, is for them to go home and say, wow, that was a great decision. I had a great day. I felt welcomed. I got information. So keep that in mind.
It really goes into that creating a culture of caring and understanding, that warmth that you want to continue to return to.
Exactly. And remember that when they go home and say that positive information about their first day or their training, that information is going to spread. So again, people hear that and it's like, wow, ABC Farm must be a good place to go. Another little thing I can suggest is a new hire gift bag. And that could be as simple as some, the company swag, or maybe some bottled water, Coke, a few little snacks, but just something to say welcome. So another thing, I get it that not every, owner or leader can be the person to take care of the entire onboarding process, but select that person who will be in charge before. That way they can take on making the further introductions to all the team members and complete the enhanced onboarding program. There was a time on my old dairy where honestly it was a free-for-all, right? Somebody showed up, we're all looking around going, who's got time? Who's not milking? Who's not treating? Who's not in the tractor? Maybe someone could do 30 minutes, someone else could do 10. We weren't making that employee feel very wanted or very special. So again, if you can put someone who's totally in charge of that, it does make a huge difference, because you don't want that employee to feel like they've just been a bother and that they shouldn't have showed up. So provide tours as well of your facility. I can't tell you how many employees I've interviewed over the years who had no idea where the feeding center was, no idea where the shop was. Maybe if it was a large enough farm, didn't even know where the office was. That's something that is important, that they know the entire facility, not only for safety and emergency reasons, but again, if that person could be the potential to move up or into another role, they need to have an understanding of your entire business. And I should have said this before, in the first 5 minutes of your new employee coming there, please tell them where the restroom is. That's always been a big thing where people are like, the first 5 hours, nobody told me. So anyway, another great thing to do is give a history of your farm and business. And again, we're going to talk about language a lot. I know it can be a barrier. So pre-plan. You know, you can create some videos, some PowerPoints that are translated into Spanish, for example. And then you can just sit with that new hire as you go through this. But at least it gives them an insight to your farm, to your culture, and to your history. It's a way to make a great introduction. This is also a great time to explain your farm's culture and vision. If you want them to be a true part of the team, they need to understand your goals, ideals, their role, and the rules. They need to know at all times what is expected, what's acceptable, and what's not. Then we're going to go on to the good old paperwork. When completing the paperwork, please don't just leave your new hire there unattended with a 30-page stack of paperwork and a pen. I've done it. I'm going to say it. I've done it, and I know many other farmers do as well. But keep this in mind, especially as you have language barriers. Many are not sure what they're signing at all. I had several sessions where I was interviewing, different employees and talking about this first day. And one of the biggest fears they shared with me was the signing of paperwork, where they were just told, escribe su nombre, and they had no idea what they were signing. So put yourself in their shoes and take the time to explain these things. And when you're going through the paperwork, don't forget about, the job description, the employee handbook. Don't just hand it to them. Explain what's in there. They need to understand about pay, vacation, your rules. Does the new hire even know when to expect their check or how they're going to get it? And most importantly, do they understand what all the deductions are? And I know many of you can attest to my experience. Employees leaving without notice because, as we heard through the grapevine, we took money away. Tom's check was not the same as Tim's check. And yes, they do compare their checks. The employee didn't give us the opportunity to explain. They just disappeared. Had I taken the time to explain how taxes and deductions work, I could have saved myself a lost employee. So that's pretty important information. Days going on, take your new hire to lunch. Better yet, bring lunch in, sit in the conference room, and invite some of your key leaders and managers to join. But don't make this about you. This lunch should be about the new hire. Let's get to know them on a personal level. Ask about their family. Ask about, their hobbies, what foods they like. Just really get to know them, because again, that's going to make them feel really cherished and give them the impression that, wow, these guys care. But in the long term, you remember that information and you can use it again in a feedback situation or just making general conversation. So that's pretty important. The rest of that first day should be going into very in-depth a conversation about their roles and responsibilities. And again, language can be a barrier. So utilize any type of videos, whether you've created them or you get the free ones online that are bilingual. I know the Dairy Coach has some excellent videos that help with training and protocols. So this is the kind of information you want to give them on that first day, not 3 weeks from now. and verify that they have the tools they need to complete the duties. Do they have the correct boots? Do they know where the safety glasses are? Do they need aprons, coveralls, gloves, anything like that? Take the time to also share with them where the tools are that they will need for their job, such as the teat dip, extra latex gloves, inflations. So that's not for them to just guess. I'll take a trip and try to find it. It's also a good time to let them know what items are off limits. Because again, you can't reprimand someone for something they didn't know. So if, the medicines are only the responsibility of your herdsman's owners and maternity, then you need to point that out, that, this is kept locked or this is not for you to go into. So before your new hire goes home for the day, you want to prepare a training schedule with them so they're understanding what's expected. And a training schedule is not one shift. Okay, it's a time. It could be 30 to 60 days, whatever your business chooses. But I would suggest, aligning up a mentor or a buddy system. It works the best. That way you have one of your valued employees that is in charge and accountable for this new hire. And so allow them to meet that person before they leave for the day. So the next morning when they come, they know exactly who they're looking for and who's going to be completing their training. And then it's this mentor's responsibility to make sure that that new hire is getting the correct training and following the protocols that you've set up for your farm. Again, I'm going to stress this first day is extremely important to making an impact on your new hire. Don't go south. Stay the course. Put the time into it. You're creating a moment. You're creating an impact. And what it's going to do is help solidify their choice to work for you. That's your goal, that they go home and say, I made the right choice. This is a chance, again, to just make that positive impact. And why is that important? Because people leave jobs because of managers and supervisors. The most frequent complaints we hear are lack of clear expectations about their role and their duties. So again, good onboarding and good training is going to clarify that information. A lack of clarity regarding their pay, how they get raises, earning potential, how can they move up, what criteria must be met to do so. And of course, poor communication or lack of communication is huge. And the last one I think is really important, and that's failure to involve your employees, to include them. Rather, we see some that kind of just treat them as an insignificant piece of the pie. So they want to be part of their team. They're really excited.
So Liz, on the note of onboarding and training and everything that goes in between, when would be a good time to really check in with that new hire? You were talking about maybe having that 30 to 60 day training period, but when would be a time to circle back with them and see how comfortable they feel? Do they feel we're going too slow in the pace of training them? Are we going too fast? Do we need to take a couple steps back? Because ultimately we want this individual to succeed, but
Right.
how do we encourage that feedback? When's an appropriate time?
Yep, and communication every day is always good. If for some reason you can't, make that time to check in, then I would say at least weekly. So, you even set up a special time, let's say 2:00 on Fridays. I want you and the mentor to come to my office and let's talk about how it's going. But preferably if you could, depending on their position, stop in and see them every day, every other day, just to touch base and let them know that those means the two-way communication is open. So, excellent question.
Perfect. We have another question that came in through our question portal, if you will, and I encourage those that are listening live, again, this is your perfect opportunity to interact with Liz one-on-one, get your questions answered, and it helps steer today's discussion as well. And the question is as follows. I like to farm, and obviously we need our employees, but I don't want to fall into only HR. What do I do to help new hires in the long run, but keep farming? I think this seems to be more of a cow person, but how do they really work with the people side of things as well?
And that's a great question, and it's hard. I always tell people, just because you're the owner or just because you're the leader doesn't make you the HR person. If you don't have those people skills or the desire or the time, then you need to determine who that person is going to be. And maybe it's a trusted employee. Maybe it's a family member who doesn't really work full-time on the farm, but they know what's going on at the farm, and this might be something they could do on a part-time or as-needed basis, but they take control of that first day. So if you don't love it at all, can you shorten it up a little bit? I suppose, but again, as I'm going to go into this slide, it's what you put into it. And if you need those employees, this is no different than what, helps the cows produce more milk, or what's going to help us produce higher quality feed. You're talking about your employees, your most important asset. And I like this quote because it kind of shocked me, that the cost of replacing an individual employee can range from 1/2 to 2 times their annual salary. And according to Gallup, that's actually conservative, and that's just one employee. So if you look, at your year and you're losing 3 to 6 for whatever reason, that's a lot of money.
And Liz, I'm sure this is your transition part, but I just wanted to kind of get to the point of, what if you think you have a great employee, but they're in that wrong seat on the bus?
Yep.
How long do you wait to kind of figure that out, and how do you maybe shift them? Because that potentially leaves that opening up again. So how do we work through that?
Yep, I'm going to talk about training first, but the being in the right seat on the bus is extremely important. And it's something as, again, an owner, manager, that you always need to be looking at, and whether it be taking mental notes or writing it down somewhere, things about their personality, their skill, their drive, so that when you need to do some changing around, you're not just guessing. You've got some information that you can really utilize. So, but great, we will get to that. So we're going to move on to effective training, because training, just as I say, doesn't end on the day one of onboarding. It doesn't end in the first few shifts that they work and seem to catch on. So I've seen this 100 times where, we just throw someone into the parlor on their first day and pretty much say, good luck. That's not effective training. So as I alluded to before, providing guidance, hands-on training, all while explaining why this job is important, why this task must be done this way. Because explaining the whys, giving them that explanation, makes it seem more real, and they have a better understanding. So then you have tools, time, and training, and they should be your best friends. So when an employee is failing at work or failing at a job, ask yourself, what about the work system is causing that person to fail? What haven't I done, or we have done as a team, to make sure they don't fail? They need to have the necessary means to do their job right. So we want to make sure that we're providing that. If we see that they're out of latex gloves, if they're out of, the microfiber washcloths, and instead of getting more, we see them flipping them over 3 and 4 times and using dirty rags, we're not giving them the tools to meet our goals or be the best that they can be. And you can talk about training just for a new hire. Well, we can't forget about our employees who have already been there, right? So in order to advance your teams, continued refresher courses and new trainings are necessary. I use this verbiage all the time. Tell them, show them, watch them, and repeat. And I don't care if it's Juan who's been there 10 years or Mark, who just got hired. Everybody picks up bad habits after a while. Everybody tends to skip a step because we don't understand its importance and we can get done 5 seconds earlier. So we all need refreshers. So now we'll get to your bus question. So we can talk about hiring right, effective onboarding and training. Those are the keys to a great team. But we need to also look at the team we currently have and verify that we have the right people on the bus. I want to just read to you a little excerpt from the book Good to Great, because I think it really has significance here. You are the bus driver. The bus, your company, is at a standstill, and it's your job to get it going. You have to decide where you're going, how you're going to get there, and who's going with you. Great bus drivers don't start the journey by announcing where they're going, but rather who is going with them. They start by getting the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. So it's people, then direction. And I know we're all accustomed to setting our goals and just saying this is where we're going and hope that everybody follows behind us, right? You really need to look at your people first and decide, I need the right people to help me reach that goal. So it's a great book for one thing, but it also has some really good learnings that we can all utilize. So like I said, you need to determine, do you have the right people in the right roles? It's easy to promote Jack to herdsman when he has 4 years experience, but is Jack in the right role? Does he have the skills necessary beyond the herdsman skills to complete the duties? Is he going to be managing people? And if so, can he manage people? He may be a great employee who's there every day, but he lacks the ability to delegate, lacks the ability to train or provide feedback. So then you have to say, is he in the right seat? We need to look at their personality, their experience, and their leadership skills before promoting or moving to another role. So I see a lot of times, and just about every farm, we always tend to move up the person who's been there the longest. And I would say probably 8 times out of 10, it has a negative effect because that person may be good at the actual physical duties, but he's not good at the rest of it. So you could have someone who's been there less time, maybe even still has some herdsman skills to improve on, but he's really good with people. He's a good leader. He's a good communicator. Those are the things you need to look at. Don't just hire or move up because they've been there. And then another thing is take the time to meet with that person before you move somebody up and make sure it's what they want. They may not want the job. Maybe they want something else. So don't hesitate to ask.
And Liz, I think you're triggering a lot of hot topics here because we have some questions that have come in. One of them is, I thought I hired the right person, but found out they're not the right fit. What do I do if I like the individual, but I also don't see it working out long term?
Okay, well, 2 things, because I heard they like the person. Is there another fit on another role? That's something to look at because maybe they might flourish in a different role. It could be that person doesn't even like what they're doing either. So again, communicate and ask. And if it's just not working out, that's the time to, I hate to say it, but get the person off the bus, because the amount of time you're going to end up putting in and investing in that person, you're not going to get back. And again, you always have to think of the rest of the team members. If they're watching this and they're seeing that, well, they're settling for mediocre, why do I have to try so hard? That's where I said at the beginning, it makes your whole team come down. Everybody starts doing less. doing it not as well.
Another question, kind of on the flip side of that coin, is how do I deal with a disgruntled employee who shouldn't be moved to a managing position, even after many years of experience, and I hired someone new over them?
And again, those are business choices, right? But communication is key here. First of all, you can't really go back anymore, but let's say you could, and you went back and you had really good reviews with that person in the sense of you're explaining what's not being met, maybe what needs to be changed in order for him or her to move up to that next level. Really set those expectations, help them, again, get those tools in the training. And then if it's still not happening, that's an honest conversation that, again, you have to look at your business and the value or no value that person brings to it. And if it's causing you to go backwards, if you will, or other team members, that's an honest conversation you have to have, and maybe that person has to be eliminated. I never like to say that, I know, because in the times of trying to find employees, that's hard, but
it is. But that dynamic between your team is so important and powerful because it encourages everybody else to come back the next day or not in the worst case scenario.
And another story I'll just interject here is I had this farm who they just never gave feedback, and we're going to talk about that. Maybe the only feedback they gave was the negative, like, you're walking by going, you're doing that wrong, or pick up, that trash. That's feedback, but it's not the kind of feedback that employee is looking for. So my point is they never had any, and then all of a sudden they're let go due to poor performance. Not saying that employee didn't deserve it, but it's not fair that he had no idea that, there wasn't that communication and feedback to share that, hey, you're not up to par. Here's A, B, and C that you need to improve on, or you're out. And you can even set time limits. Like, I'll give it 2 weeks. I'll give it 3 months.
Good considerations there. Last question that we have for now. I have a great herd manager, but he lacks people skills and those under him get frustrated. How can we work with him to better communicate with his coworkers?
If you really like that person, and you feel it's a good investment, I would research, different classes or different events where he can learn some of those good communication and delegation tactics. Or maybe you hire someone one-on-one to come in the farm and work with him, maybe once a week. You got to give him the opportunity if you really like him. You also, I'm going to go back to asking him if that's what he wants. Because maybe he doesn't, and he'd be fine to say, I'll still do the work, but get somebody else to lead the team. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, just to get off the bus, if you will here, having people in the wrong seats on the bus or just on the bus when they shouldn't be there is going to bring the effectiveness of your team down. And like I said before, it can cause other people to leave. It's kind of that domino effect. I want to tell a little story here, and I'll keep it short, but I was just reminded this the other day of a gentleman who had worked for like 20 years on this farm. He really did the duties, but he was not really good with the owners. He butted up against him all the time. But he took control of the employees. And I kind of alluded this to before when I brought up, I hate to use the word gang, but he took control of them to the point that he had more control than the farm owner. And then what happens is as owners, now we just have fear, right? We're leading by fear because if we say something, Jose is going to leave and he's going to take 10 people with him. May happen, it may not, but it's not the way we should run our business. And so that farmer really needs to take control of that situation and get rid of that person because it's not going to get any better. And I hate to say it, but deal with the consequences because maybe all those people aren't who you want on your farm. It's really drastic. I understand that, but that is what can happen. And as leaders and managers, you don't want this little subdivision, if you will, essentially operating your business under their rules and not yours. So I want to talk about some other criteria to help you decide if someone is in the right seat on the bus or maybe they shouldn't be on the bus at all. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about, has the employee quit learning? We have some employees that have experience, but they just choose to quit learning. They know what they know, and they have no desire to grow as an employee and learn more skills. Maybe they view themselves as just a milker or just a feeder or just a sprayer operator. Not that those aren't important roles, but that's how they see themselves. And you ask them to learn new skills, maybe take online courses like we were referring to that herdsman, and become more valuable, but they refuse. They find more ways to say, I can't, than they will ever say, I'll try. So that person is probably on the wrong seat. Maybe that person shouldn't be on the bus. There's also people with the wrong experience, because not all experience is good. If they came from another farm, there might have been no training or, lack of protocols and processes. And so you're bringing them in, expecting them to be this wonder employee because, well, they have 6 years of experience, but it's not the same as how your business is run. So again, they may have a seat on the bus, but they may take some more training and growing in order to get them a better seat on the bus. And then you could have the employee who needs constant supervision, just like a toddler. They can't be left alone to work independently. Maybe they can't even be left alone to work in a team. They just require that constant supervision all the time, and they're easily blown off course, right? Like, oh, look, a bird, and there, you've lost them. So they may also lack the confidence to make decisions. But again, you have to look at that and go, is there more I can put into that person to improve their skills, or is it someone that needs to be off the bus? High skill, low will. There are simply some employees that have all the skills. Like, they look great on paper, you had a great interview, but they just don't care. Maybe they don't even want to work, right? It's a job. Whatever the issue may be, they just don't have the desire to be the best that they can be. And I'll go into lack of passion. It's different than the low will employee because on the outside, all looks good. The employee often has many years of experience, but do they actually enjoy their work? How many times have you heard someone say, you know, I've been with 3M for 25 years, but I hated every minute of it. And you wonder, well, why did you stay, right? Some people do that just out of comfort, but is that a benefit to you and your team? So don't assume that just because they've done a certain type of work before doesn't mean they like doing it. And then you have your skilled but not an expert. They can do all the work, but do not have the ability to become a real pro. There are certain jobs on your farm that you need real pros in order to shine. So settling for mediocre is going to eventually lead you to frustration.
Can you define that a little bit more when you say there's certain elements where we need that expert? What would be cases or examples of this?
Well, depending on, who does what on your farm, let's say herdsman, you can have someone who's skilled in a lot of things, but they're not a real pro when it comes to certain things such as DAs or, difficult births. They just get through it, maybe do the actions, but they're not as good at it. Or going back to the person that had the question about the herdsman who wasn't a good leader, it's kind of the same thing. He's got one set of skills, but doesn't have the other. So it doesn't make him a pro on that team. and you want everything, right? It's kind of like you don't want just the crappy steak, you want the best steak. So think of that, especially as you're trying to create this awesome team.
Okay, so it's like the equivalent to having a calf feeder and a calf manager. There's just certain elements that put them above.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep. And then extra baggage. We've all had these employees, right? They seem good. They've got the skills. They've got the passion, but maybe at home they have 20 head of beef cattle and they're constantly getting out. So they're like, I got to go home and, get my cows off the road. And pretty soon they're gone 2 and 3 hours. Or, my wife called. I got to run and get her a gallon of milk. She can't leave the kids. Well, not saying family is baggage. Please don't misquote me here. But they're not all in, and they're finding ways to leave. And the first time it happens, the second time it happens, we're like, okay, but get back here. But those things can certainly create an atmosphere that's not good, not only for you, but again, your other team members are seeing this and going, well, why do I have to stay here 8 hours? I could be running some errands. So it's just something to think about. And of course, poor leadership skills or poor communication skills. I think we've touched that on, enough, but if they don't have that, it doesn't make them the right fit for a certain position. So I'm just going to restate again, determine your who before you determine your where, and remove people from the bus that are holding you back. Any other questions before I move on? Nope. Okay. We'll go on to communication. When communication is poor, deadlines and goals don't get met, duties become difficult, ideals are not discussed, and employees do not give their best at work. It's not what you want. So when that happens, you also happen to have more conflicts, and that's not good. Imagine this. A nurse doesn't tell the doctor which leg is to be amputated. Or a co-pilot does not inform the pilot about damage on one of the airplane engines. Neither of these are going to have a good outcome. Had you had good communication, two-way communication, those issues could have been resolved. So as the slide says, communication is the single most important factor in successful teamwork. You, as the owner, leader, manager, you need to facilitate the communication. You need to start it and teach others how this is going to work. And you need to be open to suggestions, concerns, ask questions, and offer help. I think a little before you had mentioned when we were talking about the training program, how often should we check in? That's communication. A simple, how's it going? Do you have the right tools? Is there anything you're struggling with? And how can I help? Also, encourage listening and brainstorming. And I know we're not all trained in this, but you need to also be aware of employees' unspoken feelings. So if you see someone that's disgruntled, but they're quiet and they're putting their head down, they're like, nope, there's no problem. Believe me, there's a problem. And so maybe it's time that, you pull that employee aside and meet one-on-one and try to hear what may be the challenge. But you need to set a positive example by being open in the first place and sensitive to their moods and feelings. And whenever you're communicating, be clear. Don't muddle your message. Clarify your directives. But, and here's a little Twizzler here, don't just dictate. We see so many that just, here's what you're doing today. Do it. That's not communicating. That's dictating. So what you want to do is encourage trust and cooperation among the employees. Remember that the relationships your team members have and establish amongst themselves is just as important as the relationship you have with them. So keep your eyes and ears open and watch and listen and figure out what's the best way for us all to get together, what's the best way for us all to communicate. And encourage your team members to share. Emphasize the importance of everybody's contribution and how all of that helps you operate better together. So I'll kind of give an example. What that means is when parlor employees have no understanding of how the herdsmen and the feeders are interrelated, or how that helps in the goal of creating quality milk, they only know one job, and they've not been afforded any of the explanation of other roles and how the operation works. So it's amazing how we may think it's not important for them to know that, but it is, and it again creates that team atmosphere of all of us working together for one goal. And don't be shy of delegating problem-solving tasks to your teams. I mean, after all, some of the tasks or issues that you're facing, your employees might have the best answer because they're the ones in there dealing with it, and they might have better solutions to the issues. So that's all part of communication. But so often we think, I got to fix this, right? We have high somatic cell. I got to fix this. I got to look at the dairy comp reports. How about go to the team? Talk to them. Find out what's happening, what they're seeing. It's pretty amazing what you can learn. So again, communication, some of you are going, yep, but I don't speak Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, so this could be hard. We realize there's diversity. So what can you do? How can you, be better at this communication when you don't speak the same language? I've seen a lot of people be successful with offering language learning classes right on site. So it just, again, it's a way of bringing everybody together as a team and learning something new. There's plenty of videos that you can utilize in Spanish. Again, we talked about bringing in an interpreter. Maybe it's something you do once a month to have certain meetings where you're just regrouping with your team, maybe going over some additional changes and protocols, but just having that moment to be able to speak freely. Tips on, especially when you have issues with language, is don't overuse slang. Don't overuse professional jargon. You need to keep your messages simple and to the point. So we're not trying to confuse them more here, right? And take the time to learn from them as well. I know many of my friends in the industry have taken classes to learn Spanish. Maybe it's something just even on the Kindle, and that helps, and the phone apps help, but it shows a real appreciation for your team members. When you take the time to learn something about their culture, they're going to be more apt to take the time to learn about yours. So we talked about all this. Sorry about that. Skipping my steps. So technology, I've alluded to that a lot. We've really been recommending technology tools a lot more to our clients. It's our friend. As much as I myself was just complaining about it earlier, it's there and we need to use it. So besides all the apps that can help you, with translation and speaking, there's apps that can help you keep, track on projects that you're doing, keep track on duties, keep everybody, in communication throughout the day without having to be in the same room. And again, some of these can be translatable, but you can determine how to use them. These are some of my favorite. The Trello, the WhatsApp, a lot of you are probably familiar with. OneNote, Chanty, T-Sheets. Not everybody needs it depending on what your farm does, but even if it's all the key employees, again, to stay on track, who's where? Does someone need help? What projects are we working on this week or this month? Did you have a question?
I do. So I am very basic when it comes to apps on my phone. I will admit I am not your typical millennial. So as you go through these, are they ones that are just automatically on your phone, or are these ones that some of them may have to be uploaded? If folks are not familiar with them, where would they seek them out?
Right. So a lot of the apps, and I know there's more. These are just a few. So I'm sure somebody's going, yeah, but what about, I'm sure there's more. The WhatsApp, things like that, and Trello, I think you just download the app. OneNote is part of Microsoft 365. Chanty, I believe, and T-Sheets are also apps. Most of them are free. Some may have a minor fee. I'm all for the ones that are free and easy to use. But I can't make that determination for you because everybody has different levels of experience. So check them out, read reviews, see what other people are using. But let me tell you, it's great on saving on paper. I'm a big proponent of meetings, but you can't have a meeting every single day, every hour of the day. So it's a good way to keep that communication going.
Most definitely. Well, Liz, we are rounding up on the hour today, and I don't want to cut you short because we are going to have you back. There's lots more to discuss. I know that. Yes. So as we are rounding out today, I guess put us in a summary. Maybe summarize, like you gave us in the beginning, a great summary, but give us it one more time, maybe the 2 key takeaways. Yes. That we can just really walk with this week. And then even maybe 2 action items that if we're not already doing it, we need to be really considering it and building it into our team. Right. So we said we're going to talk about these things. These are all just, again, pieces to creating and maintaining an effective team. Starts at the beginning, with your selection, your hiring right, really designing and implementing an effective onboarding system, giving the right training not only at the beginning, but throughout that employee's tenure at your farm, making sure you have the right people on the bus, getting rid of the ones that are bringing you down. Communicating, again, it's the number one thing. If you're going to have people, you have to communicate. And that goes for your family as well. I mean, you may not have any employees, it's all farm family, but believe me, you have to communicate. We didn't get into the stay and exit interviews, but those are really important. And I do have the stay interview guidelines that you can download at the end of this. Incentives are really important as well. I don't know if this is something you can share, but we can certainly do that. But your take home is it's not a one-day thing. This is an ongoing process. You're always learning. You can always add and tweak a little at a time. So here's what I was saying. 2 things. You can get the onboarding and stay interview documents by just going to that link or texting KEEP to that number. And I don't know if you want to take a picture of this or whatever you want to do. And then on top of it, I'm happy to offer free 20-minute coaching sessions with anybody who goes to the Calendly and makes an appointment. Thank you. Thank you for that and this great reference page as well. Liz, thank you for coming back. And it's clear I'm not making a teaser for folks. We're going to have to make this into some sort of series because this is invaluable information. It's always goes to the saying that Shelley really loves of you're green and growing or you're ripe and rotten. That continual education, there's always room for improvement, or even that 4-H motto of make the best better. Right. So we're always tweaking and fine-tuning things, especially when it comes to our people side of things. We may have perfected our cow side, but the people element is sometimes a new dynamic to us. So we're always fine-tuning it. So thank you. Thank you for today. I look forward to seeing you again in the future. So thank you for your time today. You bet. And as we do round out today's discussion, I thank you again as being a listener, regardless if you're watching us live or you were able to tune in later. We're always excited to have you be a part of the Dairy Signal. Coming up this week, tomorrow, we have Nicole Bettinger joining us more from the conflict resolution. So when communications might get a little fuzzy, how do you work through it now? What are the next steps and how do you really make sure both sides are being heard and listened to? And then Thursday we'll round out with, as we're officially into 2021, we'll have a market update with Dan Bossi. A new element that I do want to bring to everybody's attention, it will be debuted at our business conference in March, is Nexus. This is an element of innovation. For folks, regardless if they are particular within the dairy industry or agriculture, even broad stroke, These are industries and businesses that have cutting edge technology that is available, and they will be debuting it, if you will, kind of like a TED Talk style, releasing that information, letting you see it possibly or even touch it. But this again will be our Nexus stage. I encourage you to check it out. And those that have these innovations, please also check out this website because you too can apply to be a part of this discussion. So again, Nexus is a new element incorporated into our business conference. It'll be in March. And we hope that you have the ability to check it out and engage with it as well. Without further ado, I want to thank you for tuning in today's Dairy Signal. We look forward to seeing you in future episodes. But without further ado, have a safe and wonderful Tuesday. Thank you, everyone.